Flyover Footy. Phil here. We got a full house. Maybe the fullest house we're going to have for a long time, maybe ever. Then that's first on the list. But before we get to that, let's introduce everybody because it has been a while. We're back in the saddle, as we're saying here. We've taken a long break, and we got to start prepping for this draft in the beginning of preseason and then the real season, and then we're really rolling. So first off, Matt Baker, how's it going?
It's going great. Finishing up the World Cup, ending the hiatus. Feels like we're taking the training wheels off again and getting back, like you said, on the saddle. I'm excited for where we're about to go.
Yeah. In some ways, like just like one more big step, and then we're like right where we were last year, like preseason, trying to learn what the players look like, except better. Well, I won't talk about that. Jake, how's it going, man?
Good. I've got some whiskey to celebrate and be sad. But yeah, it's going really. I will say, over the last like year plus, when I've been doing this podcast with you guys, like my life situation wasn't always the best, but hey, things are looking way up. So I'm feeling really good.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. So first on the books today in the episode, Stu, how are you doing though, man? Stuart?
Good. My school semester's over. I'm cruising to the Super Draft season and season for 2023. Excited.
Me too, man. Santiago, how are you? We were talking about if anyone's watching live, Santiago has a new background and it's sexier than all of ours.
Yeah. It's a new background. My wife and a friend helped me come up with, and when I use it for this and for the podcast in Spanish, hopefully I'll be covering a lot of St. Louis soccer next year. So that's part of preparation for that. But doing great. Just got back from Columbus, Ohio. I was there for work. I'm a little tired. Didn't sleep much in the last few days, but ready to talk about St. Louis City SC with you guys.
Doesn't it hurt to visit a city and there's no soccer to watch? I hate, like, it feels like a waste.
Yeah, my trips to Columbus are usually December, so no MLS. I also go to LA once a year. Last year I was lucky. I got to see LAFC against Portland Timbers, but this year when I went, it was the international break, so no MLS soccer for me.
Yep. Where did I just go? I just went to Vegas, and I got to see a Vegas Lights game last time I went to Vegas several years ago. Yeah, so
Nice.
it's a good place to watch the World Cup. I am not an advocate of Vegas in general, but it's a good place to watch the World Cup. All right, let's get to it, guys. Jake, this is your last show with us, and we have some tears to cry in our beers here, but also a lot of celebrations. Like, take us from the beginning, man. You were in a very different place a year and a half ago, like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think everyone knows you worked in radio up until a few weeks ago, which has been great. I worked in radio a long time, and it helped led me into doing all the podcast stuff. And Phil, I think you mentioned it recently. I don't remember where, but I think maybe just your tweet on my announcement, but like that led me into wanting to do podcasts and help produce podcasts and help develop shows and everything, which led me to meet Diem and Phil and be like, hey, man, do you need any help with Flyover Footy? And I had no intentions of being like one of the guys here talking. I just wanted to help in the background and help the show progress, and edit anything or do anything you might need help with. And it progressed to you guys actually bringing me on the show, which has been awesome. And before I get into, I mean, people haven't seen what I'm doing now, but before I get into that, I kind of came into this whole St. Louis soccer supporter group fandom thing like as an outsider, as someone not from St. Louis, and just kind of like trying to weave my way into it. And you guys really brought me into it and like kind of made me one of the guys, which has been awesome. So you guys got me super involved, helped me meet a ton of people. It's gone from just like being a guy who watched St. Louis FC on the stream at home by myself to like coming and randomly being recognized at St. Louis City 2 games, which is nuts. So yeah, I thank you guys so much for bringing me into this and giving me a place here in the St. Louis soccer community. It's been awesome.
I'll never forget one of the games I met you at recently, and maybe they were talking about the BVB podcast, probably, but I was walking with you and they were like, oh, Jake, what's up, man? They're like, "Oh man, I love your podcast," and I was just no one knew who I was. I was like, "Damn, man! So what did that take? 5 minutes for you to surpass me in this city?"
Well,
Loved
it was
though.
it was funny because I thought when that time specifically, we were going to get beers, and
Yeah.
I thought they would just knew me from like radio stuff, or being Margot's dad. And they're like, "Oh, aren't you Jake?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh yeah, from like your podcast." I was like, "What?" I was like, "How did that happen?" Yeah.
It was awesome. I loved it. But yeah, you got a new job. Tell us about your new job. I heard it's a pretty good one.
Yeah. So if you don't know, I'm kind of like, I don't, not a trader, but I'm moving to the other side. I am officially the new social media manager at St. Louis City SC. I mean, it's like why I really got involved in like soccer culture, like really embedded into it, is because I over the last couple of years, I really got burnt out on social media in general. It is something I enjoy, and I'm very excited for my new job. But like I think through my old job, it got me really burnt out, and I like had this big old lack of creativity and everything. So I kind of put this focus on like over the last couple of years of like I'm only going to tweet about soccer stuff because that's what makes me happy, and that's what's fun to tweet about. And honestly, like I can look at that moment and like that decision, which helped lead to this job, which is really cool. And I went from tweeting about pop culture, media, radio stuff to I'm just going to tweet about soccer because that's what I love. And that kind of like I said, led to this. So now I'm social media manager, St. Louis City SC. Really exciting. Now I get to tweet about soccer for my job, which is awesome. But the downside of that is I'm kind of like I'm leaving the supporters crew and the St. Louis soccer fan community, as you will. Like the cool thing is like I still get to my job is to like engage with you guys and bring you guys like the content. And I'm really excited about that and connecting with everybody in that way too. And I'm excited to see you guys and all the supporters and fans still at soccer games. I'm still going to be around. I'm just going to be like on the other side of the fence, if you will.
It's ironic to me because people always thought I'd be the one to cross over to the other side. And here you go, Jake, the most passionate of us all, purest of heart. Now you're working for them.
Love it. So
We're very excited for you, Jake.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man.
Can you talk about like what the job's been like just a little bit? I actually, so I ran into you at the USA Netherlands game because I went to the city watch party or whatever, and I was worried. I thought you were gonna be like actually doing everything, and so I thought you were gonna be too busy to like talk to me. I said hello, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna let you do your job or whatever, and you were like hanging out. So like you're not like busy tweeting like minute after minute after minute like I thought you might be. So and your job's different than I expected, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'll say the really cool thing and maybe what's different to like what I've done before. It's like we have a full creative team, and I mean you guys know a lot of them, but like we have like a photographer and videographer, and we have Dan Doling, and like we have all these like creative directors and dudes. So like at the watch party specifically, it's like I was tweeting, like I wasn't live tweeting those games because it's not a St. Louis City game, but so that was like capturing content, but we had our like photographer and videographer there. So like at halftime, like I tweeted, he got the photos, and then I tweeted stuff, which was like made my job real easy because I got to watch the game and then tweet at halftime and tweet after the game. But like I think that it's a really awesome team environment. I was talking to Matt, you and I were talking quickly after I started, and I think he kind of made a joke. It's like, oh man, you're like all in. I was like, it's just like it's a really good environment. All the people are awesome. I really enjoy working with them. And it's a really good team that's putting out. I would say this isn't okay. I'll say from the like few weeks that I've like experienced St. Louis City SC and like our interaction with some other MLS clubs. Like I think we're really doing stuff that other clubs like aren't even close to. And I'll say that from a supporter. I think it's pretty apparent from like City Flavors and some of the other content they've created before I was there. Like I'm very new to this still. But I think St. Louis City, they just got a really cool team that's doing stuff that other MLS clubs like can't even fathom touching, which is really cool.
Well, you know, we've, like you said, we know you really well, and we've met everyone else. It seems like a really cool environment. It's good to hear that it's going well and that you're enjoying it, and that St. Louis seems to be ahead of the head in the game, and I love that. again, like, you know, I tweeted it, but I just want to say quickly, like, I just am in love with the fact that you came to me like so humble, like just wanted to work. You weren't like looking for spotlight immediately and all that. So, and you've saved my butt a couple times already, several times already, in the short time you were here, trying to, you know, record shows I couldn't be at, or like helping with audio and editing and all that stuff. So, dude, thank you so much. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. We're so happy and proud of you, man. Love it.
Thanks, guys.
And
We're gonna miss you, Jake.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'll still be around. I'll still see you guys. Just won't be doing the podcast every
Yeah,
week.
we'll miss you at the podcast. But yeah, we'll see you at the games. We'll see your live tweets on game days. So yeah, we'll be interacting with you
I
We'll have to
somehow.
we'll have to get some guest spots or something from Jake, because I can't go the rest of my life without being on a pod with Jake.
well, here's the problem.
Unacceptable.
Here's the problem. Tomorrow we're gonna get an email from Com saying, please, if you'd like to speak to Jake, come to us first.
Right,
You no longer
right.
have access to Jake.
I definitely see all of your tweets, which is good. I will say, I think there's been some stuff that maybe you guys have been like speculating, and I probably I haven't been as interactive on my personal Twitter lately. And it's not, I feel like maybe you guys are putting out some rumors and stuff here and there. I'm not not liking it because I'm not trying to speculate or not speculate to anything. It's just because I'm literally I haven't been on my Twitter and stuff as actively because I've been doing all this city stuff. But it is funny, like seeing some tweets. I'm like, I don't want to speculate. Like me in my position now, I don't want to speculate to anything.
That makes sense.
I want to lead you on in any way. But I am seeing all your tweets still. And I am admin. I'm that guy. In part, I will say there's we like I said, it's a team thing. So it's not just me. But I think I told someone, maybe it was Will Bramer. He said, so do we direct our negative tweets to you? And I said, I'm just going to reply with a picture of Margot. So if you have anything negative to say,
nice.
The auto reply of Margot looking real cute.
You can't stay angry after that.
No, you're right.
Physically
I was
impossible.
angry, and now I'm just in love.
Oh, on that note, because I know this has been speculated too, I did not walk into this job and was like, hey, have you heard of Margot? Let's put her on everything. I will say that was not my idea. They came to me, and I just need to put on the record, I did not walk into St. Louis City SC HQ and was like, let's put my dog everywhere.
Well,
I mean, do the paychecks go to you or do they go to her?
Well, that was the thing. I did have to ask when I got my first paycheck. That said, is this like my actual salary, or is this like an appearance fee for Margot? I just wanted to check.
Exactly.
Like, who's actually getting paid?
The truth is, Margot signed first, and then Jake was signed. That's the truth.
Yeah,
Margot's
Margot.
The designated pupper.
We all know Margot. This is honestly Margot's job. I'm just the thumbs.
She was like, listen, it's a combo package. It's me and Jake, or you don't get me at all. And they were like, God damn it.
As it should be.
We'll take Jake.
I will say, I think people finally got what they wanted with Margot, though.
Yeah,
that's
really
awesome.
It was good stuff. Yeah.
She looked great.
Can't say the club's never given the fans what they want. That's for sure.
All right, Jake. We'll let you go, man. This is it.
Yep.
You are legally obligated to leave the show before we start talking about rumors.
I don't even know if I was legally available to do this first 13 minutes, but I appreciate you guys having me.
We'll find out tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
See you
Cheers,
later,
Jake.
guys.
Bye, Jake.
Love you
Cheers.
guys. Bye.
Great guy, that Jake. Cheers to Jake. That was
He's the best.
yeah, super cool.
Can't even pretend trash talk him after he left.
Oh, I know. It like hurt me to pretend to make fun of him. Oops, that's not what I meant to hit. Sorry, guys. Okay, so we're going to talk about soccer now. We have actually, it's a small outline, but each dot on that outline could take a while. So, and I know Matt, I mean, have you been going through withdrawal, like not talking about all the things you've been researching? You've been doing a lot of research.
So thankfully I created my own little City SC report, like weekly thing, just because I can't keep it in. Like I was talking to somebody earlier and they were talking about like, what do they do for hobbies or to unwind or to just decompress? And I realized that like the thing that decompresses for me is researching nerdy soccer stuff.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah, it's definitely hurt to not talk with you guys about it during the World Cup. It's even hurt a little bit trying to actually focus on the World Cup, especially after the US went out, because I just want to shift so much back into city stuff. I want news to start happening again. So the expansion draft, when it happened, was kind of like my beacon in the darkness there.
Yep. And the holidays have gotten me real good. I'm the opposite, where I've been busy and I've been using the World Cup as a bit of a relaxing thing. So mostly hosting tonight. So let's talk about the first thing we want to talk about, which is, since we haven't met in a while, we haven't talked about several official signings at this point. Listing off a couple, the two guys that are official. Let's start with them. Akil Watts, Celio Pompeu, and Max Schneider's finally. We've been talking about him for a while, but it's finally official, right?
Thank God.
Thank God. I agree.
Max Schneider in particular, I don't know if I could have made it through the holidays still speculating if he was going to get his green card, if we were going to use an international slot. Like, that was and he was already being on MLSPA's payroll. Like, we knew he had a contract. So that whole thing, I'm just so glad that they got the international slot when they did, for the price that they did ahead of the expansion draft. Because if you remember, we traded for 3 additional international slots, used one on him, got it at a discount. I mean, it all works out pretty well.
Yeah, and let's talk about that though for a second, because I guess we're assuming at this point that we are using an international slot, but we've also talked about and joked about in our DMs about how Charlotte was able to, once the green card happened, flip that to not being an international slot anymore. So are we assuming that's what's going to happen with Schneider, or what do you think?
I think at some point I would expect him to be maybe one of the first people, because he's been with us the longest of anyone currently occupying an international slot. And so we know that in the early parts of last season, Charlotte converted, I think, 2 players from international to domestic when they got their green card, despite the MLS rules explicitly saying that you have to do that by the roster lock date. We found out there was a gray area implemented after. It could be in the next year's rules. I don't know. I would definitely expect him to fall into that category, which just kind of goes to show and remind everybody that while we have 9 players occupying those slots now, that's going to be nebulous. It could change before opening day, and it definitely will change next season, freeing up some of those slots again for secondary transfer windows next year.
Matt, so since he has been signed since February, March, do you think he's ahead of the rest of the international guys on the green card process?
Oh, yeah. I have to believe that. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason. I think I would expect him to have been signed with that expectation, or at least possibility. Right. And so with that possibility existing, it only makes sense, knowing that cities had the infrastructure in place for well over a year, to have the legal team that can go through that green card process to go ahead and get it started for him. Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's plausible that we, what do we have? 3 international slots, or 2, not 2 plus
2 left.
And then if he were to get his green card midseason and that frees that up, I mean, in the next transfer window, I envision us having 3 if we want them, or, having 3 to sell if we don't want them. So,
well, I think the January transfer window is going to be interesting, because we can bring in more players, or at least 1 or 2 more right now, but we're going to talk about the super draft later. And there is an element of these international slots that could be at play there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
A couple different things that could happen. We could walk into the season when it starts in late February with no free international slots. And then as our folks get green cards, they open up. That would be fine too. I think my only thing is I just want to have flexibility. And so I never want to be in a position where we're completely stocked up and there's no hope of a player converting before the next transfer window. Because once you're in that position, you're really limited on who you can sign and from where. So it restricts you in a lot of different ways from your scouting and recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what they said too. They were like, we want the flexibility. So great.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so Akil Watts, Celio Pompeu, are these surprises? I for one expected Akil Watts. I didn't expect Celio, but it makes sense to me, especially after watching him against Bayer. Really, that was more of a for sure. Yes.
Yeah, to me, neither was surprising. They were more of a relief. So in a different way than Schneider. Akil, if you remember, was the player who was overtly discussed last year in the Post-Dispatch article as Hackworth saying he forecasted him as an outside back in MLS, despite the fact that he loves playing central mid the most. And so there's always been that conversation for us before that, but especially after that article came out for Akil. And when the MLSPA salary guide came out last year, we saw that Max and Celio were on MLS deals, indicating that they had options that could be picked up. Akil wasn't, so he was that player, I think, at the top of everybody's list besides those two, along with a couple others, but he was definitely up there that we wanted to see and we're hopeful about. So the flexibility that he also offers with that midfield, and he can play that box to box, and what Hackworth said about outside back speculation in MLS gives flexibility that mirrors a lot of the other players that we've been signing.
Yeah, and after the expansion draft, the two holes that I was seeing, and we're about to address one, but having a total lack of central midfield, and then missing a right back, those two especially fill some holes that we were like, okay, what the hell are they thinking? Obviously, that's what they were thinking. So interesting there. Okay, so the other, go ahead.
It does beg the question, though, because we're talking about filling out the roster. It does beg the question and Celio, before we even think about overlooking him, the guy basically led the entire MLS Next Pro League in chances created. Mm-hmm. So his position on either wing, because he started out on the left side when we started bringing internationals in. He moved out right, which to me always said he is the kind of player that Lutz, Bradley, and Hackworth want to see on the field. He is one of those best 11. And when you have a player of that caliber in that kind of a league, you're going to find a way to keep him on the field. So his best position may be out left, but Jensen and whoever else, Ezra, had that position. He moved over because we needed to keep him on the field. So that's kind of why he wasn't as much of a surprise, even with the MLSPA option that existed in his contract. And I just think that lends itself to what, I've been putting together a depth chart. I got him on the right hand side right now in the depth chart, only because we have so many players right now who are quote unquote left wingers or left mids as their primary position. So where I'm going with that is I think of Max, Akil, and Celio right now as more depth, but that might be because of the experience that they have and the expectations from some of the international players that came over, which we've talked about last year, expecting the internationals to start more or less. I hope that Akil, Celio, and Max all push, just like Kyle Hebert and Josh Yarrow for playing time. I just don't know really what to expect when it comes to the MLS roster, knowing that we brought in these internationals specifically for the MLS side. I would err on the side of seeing them ahead in the depth chart initially, but depth charts are kind of meaningless. It's just fun to speculate at this point in time.
Yeah. I mean, we got so many games. We play an athletic style. So I think we're going to need them. I don't think it's a question at this point. And I'm glad you brought up those Pompeo stats as far as MLS Next Pro. I think that's really cool we'll be able to compare what that looks like in MLS. And we've seen other players do well in MLS with MLS Next Pro stats. So, I mean, it'll be cool to watch next year. And the last thing I'll say about Akil Watts, I said it when we did that game a million times, probably too many times, Santiago, that, we led the league in shots outside the box, and Akil Watts, I think was the top guy for efficiency in scoring goals outside the box. And I would say he was one of two goals that I thought we were going to score in that game against Bayer Leverkusen. I thought it was going in when I was like, I saw him at the top of the box, wide open, saw the ball get to his feet. I was like, almost. That was one of our best chances. And so he did that against a Bundesliga club with some really quality players. He can do that in MLS at this point. I think so. So that 100%. Was cool to see.
100%.
Yeah, he definitely earned his spot in the MLS team with the way he played in MLS Next Pro.
Agree. Cool. All right. So that leads us to Jake Nerwinski, and that is the Vancouver Whitecaps player that we picked up as a free agent, right? Or no, did we buy him?
Nah, free agent.
I thought so. Okay. I won't say much more. He's a right back. I'm really glad we solidified that position with a player that's a veteran in MLS. One of the few, actually, that we picked up that are MLS veterans. Did you guys have some more to say about him?
Yeah, I mean, he fills that need at right back. So right now you slot him in as our starting right back. Mm-hmm. And he has experience. So he's 28 years old. He was a super draft pick from Vancouver back in 2017. He's played his entire career with them so far. He's played with Tim Parker. So that's kind of a reunion in our back line for them, Parker and Nerwinski. But the thing with Vancouver is that as he's kind of aged with them, they've been shifting where his positioning has been. So talking with some of the fans and media out in Vancouver, it's, if you saw social media, there was a mixed bag from him. And I wondered about that, because looking back at some of their games, he's been playing on the left side of their two center backs. And that was the big takeaway, is that playing him out of position on his weak foot was very detrimental to his progress, very detrimental to his growth and his success on the field. So getting him explicitly back on that right back side, on the right side of the field with he's right footed, is just going in this style too, because Vancouver was one of the top 5 or 6 teams in MLS in pressing historically, let alone last year. So he has a lot of familiarity with the style of play he's going to need to play to be successful in our system. And given his comfortability with Tim Parker, and also I think it's just a change of scenery is going to do him well. He's a very fan friendly. He does lots of media, lots of charity. He's just sounds like a really overall good guy to have. He was the MLS PA union rep. He was a vice captain for the Whitecaps there. So he's got leadership, and with so many years in the league, I think that is the kind of, so Lutz talks about our spine. I think that's the kind of anchor that you're going to need: experience, leadership, and just style of play. So I'm a huge fan of this signing.
Yeah, and to hear that he played some center back, and in a pinch, he was the guy they chose to do that, right? And so obviously that means he can handle defensive duties at the right back position. He can press, in a pressing system, like you said, Matt. Really cool things to hear. And to think about the way that Ben DeRosa played right back last year, if it's similar, that sounds like exactly the kind of guy I would expect, actually. I did not expect an attacking, flashy right back in the least. This is like kind of what I expected. Not to speak bad of the guy. I'm very happy with what we got.
Yeah, it's a great signing, and I like the fact, as Matt said, that he's familiar with Tim Parker. They have played together before, even though it was a few years ago. Having guys who know each other and that have played together before, it's a plus for a new team, and we saw some of that with City too. You had Dolling, Creek, and obviously the name is escaping right now. Can you guys help me out?
Oh, sorry. Parker? No.
No, Parker.
What is wrong with me?
Oh my God, Kyle Hiver. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Brain fart. My bad. But yeah, they all of them played together in college, and you also
Missouri
had
State, yeah.
in Missouri State. We also had Vitor Diaz and Max Snyder from Marshall University. So having players that know each other and know how each other play is always great, especially for a new team.
And he's not overly expensive too. That's the other thing. So when we're talking about signings, there's always an eye for, is this cost effective? Are we going to be in a good position after this? Is this where we're kind of splashing the cash, so to speak, with the MLS allocation money? And Nerwinski last year, MLSPA reported he was on a salary guaranteed total of $350,000. So decently high, especially given, but not too high given his length of service. He and the fact that he's eligible for free agency. MLS has very specific rules and guidelines around even who is eligible. It's why they have a re-entry draft. But I was very happy that we had this type of player with this experience, this caliber at this price.
Yeah, price, right? Price. We need to talk about that more often, because it is very important. Not that we can nail down every detail, but it is important.
It's tough to be. Well, you're never going to be specific. I think that's always the caveat, is that A, we don't ever know specifically how much allocation money we've spent or used. B, we don't know until the MLSPA releases their roster or their salary numbers what people are actually making real time that year. All we have right now are end of 2022 numbers. We don't know the contract he's on with City.
And the slots. Do we talk about the slots later?
We might as well talk about him now, because I think Nerwinski was the most recent confirmed signing. From here, we've just got some rumors. So Tom Timmerman put an article in the Post-Dispatch where he numbered some roster slots, and he had some speculation about where people are fitting in. So quick plug for our MLS 2.0 pod that we did, which is always relevant, that Phil and I have. That goes into detail on the roster makeup, but essentially we have up to 20 slots on our senior roster that count against our salary cap. So the game we play now that we have a lot of players is this player on the senior roster? Or are they on the supplemental roster? Because right now we don't know. By opening day, we should know, because once those rosters are submitted to MLS, they have to be categorized. And so we'll be able to just log onto the website or the app and see what status a player has. Are they domestic, international, designated player, U22, senior roster, supplemental roster, homegrown, Generation Adidas? All of those things will be labeled. But for now, it's pure speculation. So my theory is that we have completely used up our available supplemental roster slots. I'll just say that right there and go out on a limb saying that. So supplemental roster slots do not count against the salary cap. They have restrictions on how much you can pay a player, and they still fit on this on the supplemental roster. So that's the big thing, is they don't count against the salary cap. I personally right now am seeing probably Akil Watts, Kyle Hebert, Celio Pompeo, Max Schneider, all on supplemental roster. And then we have a lot of players who have been making money that makes them eligible. So you could look at John Bell, John Nelson, Josh Yarrow, Aziel Jackson, Jared Stroud, all players who are making last year from MLSPA less than $84,000 a year, which is the kind of the cap for that supplemental roster. So they all qualify, but there's 2 players more than we have supplemental slots. So you can mix and match however you want. I think our supplemental slots are full with 1 left over. So we have 1 spot that I'm basically reserving for whoever we draft number 1 overall in the super draft, or
that makes sense.
whoever we draft in the super draft, assuming it's a Generation Adidas player.
Yeah.
Because that player automatically goes to the supplemental slot because they don't count against the salary cap. It's one of the huge perks of the Generation Adidas contract for the team, and why you always see, other than the skill, you always see the GA players go off the board first in the super draft, because they're just so cost effective for the teams.
Makes sense.
So there exists also 2 additional slots we could use specifically for homegrown players, which don't count against the cap. So you're looking basically right now at probably 14 of the 20 players we've confirmed signed for our senior roster.
Okay. I'm sorry, Matt. I'm going to pause this right there because Stuart, and I apologize to the listeners who's doing this live. I'll edit this out. I got to upgrade my account. That's why Stu got kicked out.
Uh-oh.
So you're going to have to watch me do it. There's no way to get this window out of here. I tried a couple times. So I'm already on this.
We want the Stuart.
We
do.
want
It's
Stu.
worth it. It's worth it. Oh, my Lord. Oh, my gosh. It's wanting me to. Okay, hold on. There's a button I can push here. There we go. We got to get this credit card information off the main screen.
I'm going to go get a drink while you do this.
Yeah. Damn.
Break.
Yeah.
I think we're laughing at the same thing.
Yeah. I already pay for this. I think I'm logged into the wrong account.
No.
Would be more detrimental. I don't want to pay twice. Let me see here.
Unless it is like the renewal fee or something like that.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, we're getting up close to a year.
Right. So could be.
I just realized I had my space heater on back there that was making noise. I probably sound a lot quieter now.
No, it actually didn't make any difference.
Yeah, not at all.
Whew.
I'm just paying for it, and then I'll cancel.
That's actually
tomorrow.
really. I was going to be kicking myself all night.
Oh, did it like let Stu on the second I hit process?
Wow.
That's really funny.
It's
I'll
like,
figure this out tomorrow.
pay up, pay up.
You back,
If you want
Stuart?
4 people.
Hey guys.
I'm sorry,
He's,
man. I didn't know that was gonna happen.
he's
No,
back.
I was just chilling. I was listening, enjoying, taking a back seat. There's really nothing to add. So just texting Harry behind the scenes and
Oh, nice.
and
Chilling on the virtual couch.
yeah, exactly. Put my legs googling about well, I was actually reading years ago with Super Draft. Sorry to interrupt. You guys were in such a nice flow.
Matt was definitely on a roll there. Okay, cool.
It's
All right,
probably
let's-
good that you stopped me, though, to be fair.
No, not at all. You were doing great. So actually, yeah, now I got to. So you ended with saying how many, like 16 are on the senior roster, right?
Yeah, I could probably do a segue or seg from where I was.
Well, let me ask because that's I knew what I was going to ask you. I just was like trying to figure out how.
Yeah,
to
I
do it
think the last
easy.
thing I said is that we have 14 of our 20 slots filled on the senior roster.
Oh, okay. So that's what I was going to ask. We'll just go with this. You said we have 14 out of 20, and so we got 20 total. That's
20
interesting.
up to 20 total. Yeah, you have to have at least 18. So we
Oh, okay.
could. Yeah, it's one of those you have to fill 18, but you can go as high as 20 on the senior roster.
So I guess my question is, it feels like Charlotte keeps adding players, right? And even like FC Cincinnati seemed like they were adding players like crazy. I didn't realize there was a maximum players they could have. I guess maybe they were able to push them all down to supplemental or release people. I don't know what they did, but it just felt like they kept throwing guys on the roster. So like if this goes bad and we need more players second half of the season, we can only have 20. What happens here?
There are exceptions for injuries, long-term replacements, those kinds of things. So if a player goes down, there are built-in rules to where we can bring somebody in. I mean, of course, this will be interesting to see how this plays out for us. I didn't follow it too closely for other teams, but you remember the City 2 conversations we had all year long, wondering which MLS players are actually going to play for the 2 team. We're going to have the same deal here where it could be, and we could have City 2 players be signed or graduated up. So some of these supplemental players that we have, whether it's Nelson or Bell or Hebert, Yarrow, any of these guys, they could find themselves playing a decent amount of time for City 2 if they don't get quality minutes week in and week out for City.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Matt, but if you promote a City 2 player, you still need to have a spot, right? Like it's not like you can. Okay.
Yeah.
And
So if a player is on the MLS roster, they can be loaned down essentially and then go back up. Like it's willy nilly back and forth. But if a player, so Ezra Armstrong, let's just use him right now because he's signed to City 2. He can't just come up and play for City. He has to actually be signed to an MLS contract if he wants to see action for City.
Yeah, similar to like an MLB 40-man roster.
Exactly. That's so in real life, and not on podcast, but that's the best way that I've ever been able to get people to understand slightly the senior supplemental and all that stuff is that it is like the 40-man roster if you were always able to draw from the 40-man roster. Like
Right.
it's like the 40-man roster in September.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, it does make it a lot easier, especially to a St. Louis Cardinals fans know that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, we need to give that bug to like 101 in them and say, listen, there's a way you can say it for your audience.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. All right, cool. Let's talk about some rumored signings. Let's start with the one that seems a little more solid. Stu may disagree, actually, and I hope you do. I want to hear your opinion on that. Ben Lunt, who is the goalkeeper, star goalkeeper in USL for Phoenix Rising. I've heard very good things from all my USL friends, so I'm happy about this. He's a German, but I've also heard that he definitely has a green card, so he's an American. Okay, so everyone from now on can consider him an American as far as our international roster slots. But yes, Stu, let's start with you, man. What you were a little worried about this one or something, right?
Well, I really like Kyle Martin.
Oh,
Kyle would be my go-to USL keeper, but a lot of that's personal bias, all that. Ben is a incredible keeper. He really is. He's great quality. So I don't dislike the signing at all. If you're looking at an area that where USL has a lot of quality in a position, it's goalkeeper.
Hmm.
The fact that we're drawing upon that and reaching out, I really like that. And the signings seem to be confirmed by the Phoenix Rising.
Yes, and yeah, you mentioned goalkeepers in USL being solid. Absolutely, isn't it the MLS final? Once McCarthy came in, it was like two former USL goalkeepers at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's amazing, and they both performed extremely well. We can see the quality is there, and my favorite thing is that I just love that Lutz and obviously having Hackworth on the front office staff, they respect that and they appreciate that as well. I like that. I'm glad. There's value to be had in the USL. And last thing I'll say is that next week I hope to get USL Tactics John Morrissey to kind of give us a scouting report on some of the best USL options if we were to give some of them a shot. So that's something to look forward to next week. Any other thoughts on Ben Lund?
Very solid signing.
Yep.
It's gonna be a great backup for Roman Berkey, and yeah, USL experience. Also has experience playing for Hackworth. St. Louis fans have some bad memories from him because when St. Louis FC played Louisville in the playoffs back in 2020, he has stopped a penalty kick from Wolfall that could have really changed that game. That definitely changed the momentum. But yeah, solid signing. When I saw the initial reports, I was like, I knew he's German, but I didn't know anything about a green card. So I was like, the national slot for a backup player. But then I did some research, and you also guys confirmed that he has a green card. So
Yeah, probably the only time we'll ever thank FC
so
Cincinnati.
the bill and with Rising, so I like it a lot. Also, as Stu said, I'm also team Kyle Morton. So all this time I was hoping, okay, I hope they bring Kyle Morton. He comes back to St. Louis as a backup. He had a great season with Louisville too, but Lund is a great signing too. I like it.
Wait, so and I did not look to his specificities in Louisville, but he was the keeper in the playoffs when St. Louis FC went there for their final match.
He stopped that PK.
Do you think he
Yeah.
saw us all cry after the match?
I don't know.
There was some sadness after that, and oh man, that I don't know how to feel about him now. Oof.
Well, there's a history of I'll never forget when Sean Reynolds was like pulled that BS penalty or foul against us when he came to town, and so when we signed him, I was like, wait, that Sean Reynolds? So we have a history of loving these guys eventually, right?
Oh yeah, and
For
so
sure.
I was trying to see so he was a draft pick, super draft pick from Cincinnati back in 2019 in their expansion year. He was like the second keeper, fourth overall keeper they had picked that year. That was their horrendous first year roster build, but it ended up good for Lund as he obviously had some time with some great USL clubs. But some of the things that their coaching staff at the time in Cincinnati were saying is that he's good with his feet, he's tall. He's able to distribute the ball very well. He plays really well with his first touches. So there's a lot to like, and I think if he has good distribution, that plays really well with our defenders and where they'll be on the field. Yeah, so I'm excited to see. I'm interested to see like the type of playing time he gets because he fits the bill with the experienced backup keeper. At a discount, more or less. Like I wouldn't expect us to be paying a top dollar for him at all. Even if he's around the $100,000 mark, that it's not terrible because Berkey's the highest paid keeper in the league. So I'm curious to see if because I would obviously expect Berkey to get the lion's share of minutes just about every game he plays. Is he going to be a US Open Cup guy? Is he going to be spot starts for City 2? Is he going to see action during the lead up to Leagues Cup, whatever it is, just where is he going to fit in the framework and how is it going to affect the young guys that we have coming up who we had expected to see a lot of time in City 2?
Yeah. That'll be cool to watch. And I mean, we rotated our keepers at 2 like so much,
did.
especially once we got Berkey. It was like 3 keepers. We were like, which one's playing today? So I don't think they're afraid to, but we'll see.
And honestly, I would kind of really like to see that, because that will give some consistent opportunities for our young guys from the academy, and it'll keep Lunt sharp. It'll afford an opportunity while still being there available for every single MLS match.
For the millionth time, we got enough games, So
Yep.
All right, a couple other rumored guys, but I want Matt to lead the charge on this one. I don't want to mention any names he doesn't want to talk about. So there's some other rumored players that we could be picking up in the near future. This could leak straight into the Super Draft as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest one that we had rumors. So the Lunt rumor was first put on Twitter by MLS Transfers, that account. And then shortly thereafter, I think it was right after, they said that a possible landing spot, while there are a lot of teams interested, possible landing spot for Io Akinola from Toronto is in St. Louis. And that is probably one of the most interesting rumors that has really occurred for City, at least since we heard about like Berkey, that since that rumor was churning. This one, because Akinola has an interesting history. He's a 22-year-old homegrown player from Toronto, former U.S. men's national team player, or in the player pool rather. And he filed that one-time switch in 2021 to Canada, where he has dual citizenship. And so he, in his first start for Canada against the U.S. back in 21, he tore his ACL. And he had, in MLS league play, just started to put it all together. This was a guy who was leading Toronto's attack. He was making significant strides. I think he had like 9 goals at the time. He was doing it. He was being successful. And so he was out for a year, came back middle of last year, and a lot changed with Toronto. New coach, new players, new style. And so he, whether it was getting back in the thick of things from the injury, or the new atmosphere that was in Toronto, it just never clicked for him the rest of the year. And so Toronto seems to be keen on selling him. And the rumor is that they want to bring in a DP striker, which they had sold their previous DP striker to Miami, I think. Anyway, with that comes the rumors of all these other clubs, because Akinola is making more than league maximum salary, but he's on a U22 initiative deal, found out today. So I was digging back into how long his current contract with Toronto is, because he's not a free agent. This would be a trade. We would be giving Gam probably to Toronto, but he's on a U22 initiative deal, meaning his hit to our salary cap is only going to be $200,000. And that is significant. So that's $450,000 savings to the salary cap right there. So when you start to think about how much GAM would we possibly offer, or an international slot, we have a lot of things we could offer that would make it all worthwhile, because he's on that until the 2025 season. So through 24 with an option for 25 currently, we would take that contract. There's a lot to like about him. He would provide significant depth and a viable second option to Klaus, let alone Joaquini. So we would have that firm front end depth, and obvious league experience. So the question mark to me would really be, can he regain form that he was getting into prior to his torn ACL? So that's the big rumor. What do you guys think?
I think the system thing makes a lot of sense. You watch Io play, it's like he's not a possession striker. He's a counterattack striker, and he knows how to press. The dude's good. He's athletic and he's willing. He's a U.S. youth national team player. Like those guys, it's drilled in their head to be selfless and to leave it all on the field. And so, I've watched him play live before, and I mean, the kid is a beast, right? And when he started scoring goals, I was like, oh man, this is great. So, Matt, when you started talking about how much he costs, I was like, well, this scares me. I don't want it. But then the U22 initiative, it's a little too perfect. So I like it. I don't know if you guys have other thoughts about Io.
I like it from the U22 perspective too, because we haven't used any of those slots yet. So I like that a lot. I guess it'll come down to how much money, how much GAM or TAM CDSC will have to offer to get him.
On top of that, how much the owners are willing. I mean, maybe they don't care. I mean, maybe I sometimes I worry about the owners because it's like they're going to put out money that isn't even part of the cap. So that's just
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
are they willing? Is it something they want to spend money to get this guy? I'm sure they will, but it's just like I wonder if that's going to run out at some point. They've been so giving, and we're so lucky.
It's not just GAM too. So we have 2 open international slots. That could be a use case for one of them, where if Toronto's looking for, I don't know their international situation, but if they're looking for a DP striker and they need to use an international slot, getting one could be very valuable to them. That could be something that not a lot of teams can offer. So that plus some of the GAM that we have, you know, there are a lot of possibilities, but LAFC is another team I think that is rumored to be in the mix for him. There's some other teams too. So I just don't want to get into a bidding war that would kind of take us too far. But all the moves, you know, we always say, like, you know, in Lutz we trust. All of the moves that he's made so far seem to be very rational moves. And so you can't really point to any move. I even point to the Tim Parker as a good, rational, like very savvy move. And so that kind of example just buys credibility to, if you're going after Akinola, then you're doing it for the right reasons and you're willing to spend the right amount of money.
Yeah. Matt, is it only GAM that you can trade, or can you also trade TAM?
I don't know that I remember TAM ever being traded.
Okay, just curious.
GAM's the one that always does. Well, TAM expires too. That's the other thing.
Right.
So TAM has like a 4-window expiration, so you can't accumulate it, and it has very limited spends. So that's it. I think it can be traded, but it's just not as valuable because of its specific use case and expiration.
Yeah. Just thinking that if Toronto is looking for that DPS striker, maybe if that's possible to trade, that could be a good way to get it done.
Stu, I think we might.
Can be traded.
Yep.
Or am I popping out again?
No, you're good. Go.
You're here.
Oh yeah, so him can be traded, and I know it was more common a few years ago. I forget, changed in I think 2019 or so, that kind of changed it where GAM is a lot more valuable going forward. I know they're phasing it out over time, so it's more just GAM. But Garber bucks, got all of them.
And I'm sure that everyone tries to burn through their TAM first, since it does expire. It's like, use it for everything you can, and then that makes sense. Any other rumors you want to talk about there, Matt? There's another one like that is actually I like better. I don't know if you can talk about it.
That plays into the super draft conversation.
Yeah.
So,
well, then let's just move to the super draft then, because it makes the most sense. We got the super draft coming up December 21st. And oh shoot, I meant to mention the MLS showcase. And basically the only thing to mention there is that John Klein from SLU is going to the showcase, which is like, you know, that's the kid.
Was at the showcase.
Did I miss it already?
Already happened, yeah.
Oh my god.
9th to the 12th. That's why a lot of these super draft rumors are now heating up.
Yeah, I've been such a mess this December. Did anyone watch him play? Or how'd it go? Anything? Read about anything?
Well, I think it was closed door, but the only thing I read is that on the newest Draft Utopia mock list, which is one of the places, one of the sources I use, and the guy who runs it's really, really nice. Klein is actually projected in the first round by those guys.
Yeah, that's cool. Which was a surprise to me and Stu, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there didn't seem the hype for. I mean, Johnny Klein is fantastic. He just didn't seem to be getting a lot of love. It'd be awesome if he went in the first round. It would be even more awesome if he went in the second.
Yep. Love that. You know, thinking of all the St. Louis players, you can also say, while we're at it, that Indiana lost in penalties to Syracuse.
Yep.
Tough game. They made a comeback and almost got it back, but you know, the penalties got them. But you know, the St. Louis players all looked really good, and they've all had interesting roles. I don't know if we should talk about it today because we should cover the Super Draft, but that was a cool game to watch. But Leah, let's talk about the Super Draft. Matt, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier. Let's
No,
get
you're
into it.
good. You're good. There's so many layers and tentacles and ways we could go with this. I mean, right now, so the Super Draft is 3 rounds, and St. Louis City has the first overall pick, because we're the expansion team. The thing that we mentioned earlier with the Super Draft is that the top few picks are likely going to be Generation Adidas contracted players. So for anyone who doesn't know, a Generation Adidas contract is given out. It's a joint venture between MLS and Adidas, and it's given out to an underclassman that they've really like scouted and identified as a really top performer. And it comes with an increased salary for the player. It comes with that compensation to the team where they don't count against the salary cap. It comes with educational opportunities to the player. It's a really like holistic way to say we're rewarding you for leaving school early because we think we've identified you as a top talent that should be playing pro right now. And so we know all the contracts are with the league. And so the player comes out, they sign their GA contract. They're known as a Generation Adidas player from here on out. And those are always the first to go off the board. So right now, as we record this, with the College Showcase having just wrapped up, and no other list having been developed or announced of who the actual GA players are, we're speculating of who's going to get that contract, because that's our short list of who City is going to be looking at for number 1. So there's basically one player who, it seems from my conversations with like Draft Utopia and some other guys, there's one player that everybody seems to be thinking is going to go number 1 overall, and that's CJ Fodry. Freshman forward from San Diego State, can play on the wing, is a domestic classified player, 6'2", 170 pounds, youngest player in the who was invited to the College Showcase. He's confirmed that he's going to the draft. There was a question on whether he could be a homegrown player for the LA Galaxy because he was in their system for about a year. But the fact that I'm going to butcher the name because I haven't looked him up in a while. Isaiah Parker? No.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about last year.
No, this year. There's a player from
Elijah Paul.
Elijah Paul. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Elijah Paul was the expected number 1 overall, but he didn't get invited to the College Showcase. So now there's an assumption that he's going to be a homegrown signing from RSL.
Oh, yeah.
So that kind of thing. So the fact that Fodry was invited to the showcase, has given interviews saying that he's entering the draft, that kind of is the writing on the wall that he's going to be eligible. So the interesting about him too is that he's also spent time with the San Diego Loyal. He's played some games, scored a goal. So he has experience at that level too. Almost universal expectation that he'd be the number 1 overall pick. So that leads to the interesting conversation of, would St. Louis be willing to take Fodry, or could St. Louis make history and as the first expansion team to trade away their number 1 overall pick to go down in the order, assumedly, and get some additional compensation, which is a very interesting prospect that is leading to some of those other rumors. So before we talk about some of the other players, I think looking at Fodry in particular as number 1 overall, if he's on the board, the expectation is him or a couple other players that we'll talk about in a minute. But if St. Louis decides that other teams are more desperate for Fodry and they're willing to kind of trade away for that, where would they go? Who's interested, who's not? So the teams that I've heard that could be interested in Fodry are Colorado, San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Portland, Seattle, New England, and Minnesota. So a lot of teams. There's some interesting packages being discussed. I've heard that Colorado could be offering something like the 3rd overall pick, because they have the 3rd and the 12th pick. So if they offer the 3rd overall pick and a few $100,000 in allocation money, just so they can move up and be guaranteed to take Fodry to be like a Zardes type replacement, that package is extremely attractive for St. Louis City, because at the 3rd overall pick, you're still going to get a Generation Adidas player. you're still going to get one of these top talents. And there are several defenders and attacking midfielders and forwards still left on the board. San Jose's package that is this seems like an absurd rumor, but it was very specifically said where I was in the conversations I was having, is that San Jose could offer the number 4 overall pick, because they have 2 picks as well, I believe, as well as Cade Cowell.
Yes.
His name was legitimately tossed out as a possible player that could be part of that package to get San Jose, the Earthquakes, up to the number 1 overall pick.
Sold.
Phil is so excited.
That's the one. That's the one I liked.
The inclusion of him almost made me not even read the rest. I was like, this is, but I mean, the rest of it did. I mean, there are some other like interesting conversations, especially the notion that teams that have 2 picks are most interested. The specific amounts of general allocation money being discussed around the $250,000-$200,000. That's kind of a going rate in the past couple of years for these kinds of trades. So, there does seem to be a level of authenticity to the concepts. But man, Cade Cowell being the only name that I've read that could be part of a package deal is very interesting.
Yeah, imagine getting Kate Cowell and you still get the number 4 pick.
I know.
Exactly.
So, and I think with City, it's a very particular system. So maybe CJ Fodry is not a system player, or maybe he is, but we already have too many wingers. We have other positions that we need to find players for. So it will work out for the team if they are able to make that trade and still pick at number 3 or number 4. The number 1 prospect for City may not be the number 1 prospect for those first 2 picks. So I think it will work out.
And think about the kind of players that we need. It's kind of like what you're saying there, Santi. Like, there are a lot of college players that can serve a very good purpose for us. And you think about the what is the school where Schneider went? What were we
Marshall.
Yeah, like the Marshall type player, just like athletic and leaving it on the field again. I'll use that phrase again. Like, though, there are a lot of college players that fit really well into a St. Louis City system, just like plug and play. Someone got hurt and you need someone to run their butt off, like throw them in, it could work easily. So like, there's just so much more value that we're going to put into a player that other people won't rate. So like, trading down is like a no-brainer to me in this draft.
Those scenarios, I mean, you guys took the words right out of my mouth. Those scenarios are why that's so appealing. How many times have we heard Lutz and Bradley talk about they're not always going to look at the absolute best player available. They're going to look at the best player for St. Louis City in this system that can mesh with these people, that have the off the field characteristics. All of these things play into it. And so there's zero doubt in my mind that they rate players vastly different than other teams. So they may have one of these other players in mind for who they really want. And if they can get another team to actually pay them in order to still make it possible to pick that kind of a player, it's a win all around. And so that's where you come away from it with Lutz walking into the room like he did after the expansion draft with the biggest smile on his face.
He knew he made some deals. He was excited. It was really cool.
He was ready for it. Yeah, he knew.
And yeah, I think we were saying that before the show started. Like, I would say most like MLS fans love to hate on people on Twitter, and I think we got some hate on the Parker deal till all the details came out. And so like, other than that hate that we got, like, everyone seemed to give a very unexpected A grade to Lutz on that draft, and I just kind of am starting to expect some, especially after these rumors, some fun fireworks to go down in this one.
Well, and we're hosting the Super Draft too. It's in St. Louis. Yeah. It's going to be broadcast from City Park. So the focus is going to be on us the entire time. And so what better way to make a splash than to go completely against the grain? And it's not like, honestly, it's not like a lot of these number 1 overall picks have automatically been superstars. Looking at the last few years, especially where expansion teams have had that number 1 overall pick, you're looking at Ben Bender last year, who did serviceable for Charlotte, but he's not.
I liked him.
Yeah, he's not a best player in the league. He's serviceable. He played 27 games and had 3 goals, 6 assists. It was great. for what they were needing him to do. Daniel Pereira was before that with Austin, Robbie Robinson from Inter Miami, Frankie Amaya for FC Cincinnati, João Moutinho from LAFC, Abu Danladi from Minnesota, Jack Harrison, Chicago Fire. These aren't household names, right? So these they're serviceable in what they do, but that just goes to show the dynamics of who you pick number one overall is not going to be like the NFL, where
Right.
that player has the biggest spotlight on them for the entire season. If they don't perform and they don't take over that starting role in that first season and are the guy, then it's a bust. That's not really what this is. And so knowing the history of that, knowing how you really look for this at value, even with these GA contracted players, I think that lends itself to a lot of the flexibility we're talking about and the potential for moving out of that number one slot.
Absolutely. I think my favorite, the biggest name you named was like Jack Harrison. And before the show, we were talking about how that was the last time someone traded the first pick away, and look what happened to him. So, it's not a definite win, but it's cool. I still hope we do it. I'm willing to take the risk.
Why not?
He's got my forgiveness if it goes bad. Just mine, at least.
Well, and so some of the other players. So even if we don't trade away, there's zero certainty that St. Louis City and Lutz, of all people and teams, given their previous comments, there's no certainty that they're going to take Fodry, who's the presumed best player available. So if they don't, some of the other names that I've seen on at least two different lists, especially from the guys who are actually watching and have contacts at the showcase on who is acting certain ways, who's excited, demeanors, performances, conversations are being had. Some of the other names, and there are usually 6 or 8 GA contracts. I think last year there might have been 8, but there's around that 6 to 8 number. So Fodry we talked about, Kalani Cosa Rienzi from Washington, a sophomore midfielder, defender, another domestic player, could fill that nice midfield role. He's been compared to Christian Roldan.
I saw that.
So Washington is a great soccer school, we know. And so that's another one.
Crap fields, though. Thank you.
Worst.
But he can play center midfield, which is one of the positions that we need to find another player for. So I like that one.
Yeah, and he's apparently ambidextrous with his feet, so it doesn't matter what side he plays on. That was an interesting stat I found. And so, I mean, that position in particular. So we know that they place priority on that center midfield with Leuven as a DP right now. So looking at him, if he was taken first overall or we targeted him later on, that to me tells me he can fit the system, because I don't think we would sign a center mid who wouldn't fit our system, more so than a lot of the other positions.
Yeah.
Bertin Jacquesson from Pittsburgh is another one. He's a junior midfielder, French international, not from the French men's team, but he's an international player from France. Winger for Pittsburgh. I've heard some conflicting things on whether he would be offered a GA contract until after the showcase. He's one of those guys who is rated very highly by some folks in camp.
Stuart, you liked him, right?
Yeah, no, everything I heard of Pittsburgh here was fantastic. So I think he had 8 goals this college season.
Yep. And he's a number 10.
Nice.
So we don't have massive depth at our attacking midfield position, so that could be an interesting prospect, especially, which we're not getting into this, but especially given prospects for Tomas Ostrak in the future. Could be an interesting transition.
And that phrase that haunts you, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
That he might not be here very long.
Well, what was the quote that Manuel Veth gave us at the BO4 game? It was, he wouldn't buy a jersey with Ostrak's name on it because he might not be here long.
Wow.
That's more of a reason to buy it.
Right?
Be like, hey, he was here first.
Collector's item.
I'm going to interrupt you one more time, Matt. I see you're ready to go on the next one. Do we need to do this now or later? So you can tell me to shut up. But internationals, GA, and the Super Draft, are they still taking an international slot if they're a GA? I thought so. Okay.
Yep. So again, why a lot of these players are internationals. So I've got a list of about 10 players, and looks like over half of them are internationals from France, from Ghana, Jamaica, Senegal. There's a decent likelihood that we could be selecting an international player with our first round pick. I guess I'll just say first round because first overall, I don't know.
Maybe third or fourth. We'll see.
Maybe there's 3 of them.
Well, some of these other guys, especially. So there are a lot of forwards in this list, but there are some significantly talented midfielders or players who can play the 10, center mids. It really depends on, I think, not just the player themselves, but is City looking to fit the best available player for their system and who they rate the highest, or are they looking long term to fill a need in their roster? Because I personally would look more to the former and not necessarily pay so much attention to where that person can slot in right now, even as a Generation Adidas player, because it's going to take some acclimation, right? They're young. They need some time. It might not be the worst thing if they're behind somebody inherently in the depth chart. You know, I would not look to slot this person in, whoever it is, as a starter right off the bat. So I think it lends itself more to, yes, we may have less depth at the center mid than we do our center forward, but that doesn't preclude us from taking a forward as first overall or first round. But on that conversation of a midfielder, Josh Bolma from Maryland is another one, highly rated, a Ghanaian winger for Maryland. As a freshman, he started to really turn some heads. He played in number 10 for Maryland and is expected to be in the mix to go top 5. The other player that really is being championed a whole lot is Nathan Opaku from Syracuse. And so he wasn't at the college showcase because he was obviously playing in the championship game. He's another international from Ghana, sophomore, and he plays the forward position. So there's a lot of intriguing attacking options that exist. There are a lot of other players that could be potential for GA. Those are kind of the top 5. Some other ones that I've been looking at were JC Ngando from UNC Greensboro, Matthew Bell from Marshall, a midfielder and a forward, respectively, both internationals. Matthew Bell is one of the only other freshmen, and those 2 freshmen, Fodry and Bell, are the 2 highest rated freshmen that I've seen. So those are names to watch out for, especially when you're thinking about going very young and letting the system develop them a little more opportunity. Let's see. Babacar Niang from Wake Forest is another one. I think that's the international from Senegal. So another forward, sophomore. There's a lot. So this entire list, I think, is, as you're thinking about this when the GA list comes out, these are first round picks and who we're looking to target right off the bat. I don't even personally think it's worth thinking about second or third round, even though mock drafts exist, because it's so difficult to speculate other than just seeing who may be available once you go through an entire mock draft and see what teams have needs. Those exist out there. A lot of people spend some good time on them. Go read them. But I'm most interested in either, me personally, after reading this and looking into it, I'm most interested in CJ Fodry, Kalani Kosa Rienzi, Josh Bolma, potentially Matthew Bell, but Nathan Opaku as well.
All right. So if you have to pick one of those, who will be your pick? Who would you go with?
I love the idea of trading out of the number 1 slot. I don't, a lot of GAM and getting the 3rd or 4th pick. I'm not disillusioned to think we're going to get Cade Cowell, but I like the idea of trading out so that a Colorado or a San Jose can take CJ Fodry, and then we take Josh Bolma.
Okay. The one I like, same scenario, trading, and then getting the number 3 or number 4 will be Kosa Rienzi, just because he's a center midfield, and from the report I saw, he's a very versatile player, and he can play other positions too. So I like that too.
His experience at the number 10 was really appealing, but the thing that caught my eye is this season he was used centrally. And he showed a lot of great two-way work rate and effectiveness in multiple areas of the pitch.
Yes.
So that really caught my eye as something that would be very appealing in Lutz's system.
Just hearing you guys talk about him, he seems to be kind of my favorite. I haven't done any research yet.
Another player is versatile as well. So that's another kind of, it's not a requirement, but it's like one of those things that you just tick and say, okay, this meets a lot of the things that they look for, our versatility. We have it with a lot of our wingers. We have it with our midfielders. And I think he would bring a whole lot of that. So he brings the potential for number 10. He can play up front. It depends on where the need is. And that gets him into and on the field a lot quicker.
Stuart, you were mentioning Diop, a left back.
Hamidi Diop, yep.
Yeah, we need more left back on the side. Syracuse. I'll just draft another left back. No, I feel on the draft, and you never quite know what you're going to get on that. You can get a Jack Harris, a Robinson who kind of bombs. And sometimes you get value down. If you're getting a Cade Cowell overall pick and for that first overall pick,
yeah, that makes sense.
I will say one. I don't know the credentials of the person who sent this to me. Somebody sent me a DM and they were very, very sure of themselves in that they feel the number 1 pick is locked in. It's not Fodry, and it is going to be an international player. But then other sources are saying there are significant conversations about trading away the pick. I think a lot of it lends itself to just there are conversations being had. There's no doubt in my mind that Lutz and Bradley are having conversations with, they're entertaining every single offer that's coming in. And so it's likely that sources are saying, well, they're in discussions because they're never going to hang up the phone. Lutz mentioned a lot before the expansion draft on how many phone calls he was taking, even while he's doing extra time interviews with Weeby. So this is that same thing where he's entertaining all these conversations. There are teams calling and they want Fodry, and so they're going to trade up and they want to offer this, that, and the other. But does it align with what City really wants to do? And does City feel confident that, assuming they don't want Fodry and they are willing to trade away that number 1 pick, will they still be able to get their guy in wherever they end up landing?
Good stuff, Matt. I'm glad you did all your research and more, because I've done none, like I said. No, that was really good stuff. So thank you so much.
It brought me joy.
Good. All right, guys. Should we wrap it up for today? I hope everyone is going to the expansion draft next Wednesday. There's a party, right? I haven't looked into those details either.
There is, yeah. City Park.
Okay. So probably in the Ultra Club.
I would assume. I know I saw Andrew Weeby from Extra Time saying that he's going to be there and hosting it.
Yeah.
So there'll be that kind of entourage there too.
Yeah. I think the last draft, it was like pretty much every MLS media employee was doing something there. So it was really good. I thought they did a great job interviewing everybody and really pumping up SLU. I was appreciative of that for sure. So maybe they'll do a little of that again when John Klein comes up. So yeah, look forward to that one. We'll do a review probably the week after that. Maybe that USL episode coming up at some point too. So
yeah, this is going to be the last really big thing before the holidays. And then so after the holidays, training camp starts. The players who we've signed, some of them don't start officially on their contract, like Nerwinski. His contract doesn't officially start until January. So those players will be official. Training camp's going to kick off after the new year. And then that first preseason tournament, which we didn't really cover, but it's a thing, is occurring at Coachella. Yeah, the Coachella Valley Invitational. So City has 3 known preseason games in February that will lead up to MLS starting their season on February 25th. So it's going to happen pretty fast.
We should also have a schedule before the Super Draft. That's also something we didn't talk about.
That damn shady MLS verbiage of it'll be out by the end of the year.
Who is it today said that tomorrow is before the end of the year? So
right.
I was told today is before the end of the year.
Oh yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
I just saw Harry's message. He said tomorrow.
I'm pretty confident that everything we just talked about is going to have new information come out tomorrow.
Yeah,
That's
that's right.
'cause we haven't
Right.
done this in a while, and so it's all just going to come out the day after we record, and hopefully there's going to be something long term of value left over.
Do you guys have any guesses for the home opener?
KC.
That will be there, but I just don't know if the league will.
We got to think
I
money.
have-
Actually, we got to think
Yeah.
who would be like the money watcher.
I want to see the Chicago Fire
Chicago Fire.
Mm,
because I think they're going to have SKC be our rivalry
Right,
week person or team, and so they're going to save them in the schedule for those couple weeks that they do the entire league with their rivalry week. So other than that, the other random team that they could bring in that would have the biggest impact locally, and you can market it as somewhat of a rivalry, even if that's not the one for the league, is the Chicago Fire.
Chicago Fire. Yeah, that makes sense too. But yeah, the ideal for me will be a Sporting KC. But as Matt said, I don't think the league. I think the league will keep those for rivalry week.
what big signing? Like, who's the star of MLS right now? Is it still Carlos Vela or
Chicharito.
Insigne?
Insigne? It could be, yeah. But we're not in that conference. I wonder if that matters.
Yeah,
No.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think what would bring the most attention on ESPN.
LAFC was it Galaxy or LAFC that did the home opener for Charlotte? Do you guys remember?
Galaxy.
Galaxy. So
No.
maybe LAFC, the reigning champion. Carlos
That would be
Vela.
big.
That would be
Now-
a big game.
Well, that would lead into the conversation of, is our first home match going to be opening week to conflict or really coincide with the Rose Bowl hosting El Trafico, or are they going to have week 2
Yeah, I wonder.
after the big focus on opening week, after the focus on the Rose Bowl, we get the spotlight in week 2?
I personally think it's week 2, just because opening week, like you have the Rose Bowl game, and the focus is on like first week for the league. Then on week 2, you can put the spotlight on CDSC.
I agree. I would love that.
The other thing about the Fire, I just thought about this, is Swiss Internationals head to head, Berkey and Shaqiri. So that's kind of a
There
fun
you go.
storyline. Yeah.
That would be fun. I do like the point, though, of a marquee team not really related to a rivalry necessarily. And I like the concept of LAFC coming out here and opening. Now, I also had the thought of, do I want it to be kind of a team that we could kick around a little bit, or would be competitive to an expansion team, or the like the sexiest type team you could bring in? Because with that thought, you don't really want LAFC coming in because we have a bigger chance of losing.
Yeah.
But we're not, because, first game of the year, first home game, there's no way we're going to lose with how fired up our crowd's going to be.
That's right.
Right? Drinking that Kool-Aid all day long.
Always. We always are here at Flyover.
The City Red Kool-Aid.
Can't help ourselves. That's right. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to this show, this comeback show. We'll be bringing you lots more in the near future. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks.
See
Bye.
you guys.